Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. You're listening to our D&D game. I'm your host, the Dungeon Master, and I think this is the first video on this channel where I actually was the Dungeon Master for this adventure. We do kind of a round robin thing. We let different guys be the DMs for different adventures. So this one's the first one that I'm going to talk about that's actually mine. Um, so we are picking up with Artie, the werebear. The time period is it's around the fall of the Roman Empire, loosely, and this doesn't represent, by the way, a single adventure. This is kind of an overview of a campaign that I ran. But I thought it was worth talking about. And this is where Artie meets Caius, who is a Roman soldier, and he's following the footsteps of his father, who is Ectorius. And Ectorius is stationed in Roman London. And the Roman London is kind of hard to explain. It was called Londinium, and it is where um, the city of London is today. But I need to explain the city of London for a minute. So the idea is that there are two Londons. And so if you're already familiar with this, I apologize um, for telling you stuff you already know, but I feel like most people have never heard this. So the idea is that the Romans had this settlement. Let's just call it the city of London for the sake of simplicity. Um, and then non-Romans were coming after them as the Roman Empire fell, right? This is a process. And so the city of London was completely well, not completely. It was like 99% self-sufficient and didn't need anything from the outside. Um, and then the people out there were not entirely self-sufficient. So their plan was to storm the city and gain access to the resources inside so that they could sustain themselves. But when they try it, the city of London is too well defended. So they can't breach the walls. They can't get in. But the thing is, they refuse to leave. And so the people inside, the Romans in the city of London, are hoping that these quote unquote savages and stuff will leave them alone, right? That they'll just lose interest and leave. But that never happens. So you get this kind of stalemate situation. And again, the people inside are only about 99% self-sufficient. There's still some stuff they need. And the people outside need stuff. So they work out a trade. And they say, look, we're going to be here for a while. This is miserable. We've got people on both sides are dying. If you give us X, we will give you Y. You know what I mean? And they work out a trade. And the thing is, the people outside of the gates slowly start building a town. It's sort of like, think of it kind of like suburbs grow up around the city of London, right? Well, that process keeps going and going for centuries, right? And so in the modern day, the original city of London is in the middle of what most people think of as the city of London, right? So the city of London is at the core, and what's around it is London. Does that make sense? And so you get this weird situation where, for instance, like let's just talk about taxes for a quick second. The area around the outside, let's call it outer London, right? Outer London has taxes. When we talk about like the Queen of England, she rules over outer London. Okay. And I know she's dead now. I'm just not used to talking about um, Charles as being king. It's just weird to me. But at any rate, I'll just use the Queen for my example. When the Queen wanted to enter the city of London, she had to ask permission, right? That's weird. Um, the person who ruled the city of London last I heard of was a mayor, unless that's changed. Um, so this mayor of the city of London, which is just its own little political entity in the center of what we think of as London, um, he had to give permission for the Queen to enter. And then the other thing that was weird was so when the Queen is talking about taxes and you're talking about tax collectors back in, Victorian England or something like that, right? Where all of that is about outer London. There actually are no taxes at all in inner London, right? So in the modern day, we get this weird situation where a lot of the major corporations in the world try to put their corporate headquarters in the city of London if they can. Um, because then that means if that's where their corporate headquarters are, there's certain major corporations don't pay any taxes then because of that. Check that out for yourself. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but so when we go back to how that all began with Londinium and the fall of the Roman Empire, right? That is the setting for this kind of uh, campaign that I ran. And the major military overseer of this situation is Ectorius. And Ectorius, I remember telling the players that he basically looks like Ron Swanson. Ron Swanson was a character from Parks and Recreation, played by Nick Offerman. He's stout. He looks grouchy. He's famous for his big mustache. Um, but so Ectorius is a Roman. Um, and he has to deal with this problem. And that's why he looks so grouchy all the time. And so then he has a son named Caius. I described Caius as being the same age as um well, I should say first, he looks like Jake Busey from Starship Troopers. So if you don't remember, if you've never seen it or whatever, Jake Busey is very toothy. Like that's usually what you take away from seeing him is when he smiles, he's just got massive teeth. Um, and he often would play characters that would sort of rub you the wrong way, that kind of thing. So that's Caius. He's an ally, you know. Um, so like for instance, he might say something like, I came here to save you, but not be nice. Like he's not particularly interested in being everybody's cup of tea. You know what I mean? But he's there when you need him. So he's kind of an interesting guy. And we said he's basically the same age as Arthur, but I need to explain that a little bit. Artie is um we don't know how old he is because part of it is now that he's a werebear, he's not going to age much, right? He's going to live for a really long time. So there's that. Also, when he arrived here, he did not speak the language. So he didn't know what year it was when he got here. It took years before he did learn the language for him to know like how many years has probably gone by since then. when he was bitten by a werebear and he was running around in the wilderness like the Hulk. He lost track of time then, you know. So we really don't know how old Artie really even is. And um so we just say he looks like he's the same age as Caius. He and Caius are hanging out some, and they develop this rivalry where, like I said, yes, Caius will save your life. But that said, he's kind of a prick. And we got into a little bit of the idea of a kill steal. So when they were going to fight something, because one of the things I did, there's just a lot going on with this campaign. One of the things that we did was we said underneath the city of London or Londinium are these crypts. And so it's basically a massive dungeon complex down there, right? And so they go down like because there are zombies at one point coming up out of the crypts, and they don't know why that is. And so the player characters go down and literally they sort of find the gates of hell under the city. And it's we got into the idea of Planescape. If you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, you may have heard of Planescape. It's sort of like dimension travel where you go from realm to realm. And so the crypts of Londinium in our game world were a way of accessing the planes. And so you could go through this gateway into the afterlife. And then from there there's like different sort of realms you can travel to. But so there's the someone has opened the gates and the players are trying to figure out who it is. And then the idea is that these zombies are coming through the gate. Um, so Oog, who I mentioned earlier, um, we give him the job of guarding the gate. Uh, because his player, John Loy, he got married. And as is often the case, sometimes guys get married, they get, you know, now they're busy with family. They stop coming around to the comic book stores and stuff to play the game, right? So yeah, John just quit coming around. We needed to address Oog somehow. We thought, who better to guard the gate than Oog? Because he's this unstoppable force. So, um, so that's going on. And they've got this undead problem then in the city. You know, they got problems outside the gates, which I sort of mentioned. Then they got problems in the gates. Um, and then the Thames River here, which the city of London has built on its banks, um, we set as a Spelljammer port. And if you're unfamiliar with Spelljammers, they are basically airships and they can travel from planet to planet. And then the idea is certain worlds in D&D, like Dragonlance, takes place on the world of Kryn. Greyhawk, uh, they refer to that as gray space when you go there. I believe that planet's name is Orth. Um, but yeah, these different D&D worlds are planets actually, and so we we have spelljammers here. And one of the things we introduced was at one point there was a group of vampires, and they had their own spelljammer. Um, and then we were saying that kind of the um, well, I that'd be beyond the purview of this particular video, I guess. I'll shut up about where vampires come from. At any rate, though, they were a big deal. They tied into the undead kind of theme that was going on in the city. But that also, the Spelljammer thing let me introduce two groups that became really, really super important in my campaign. And they are the Xenos, as in like xenophobia, and the Seekers, as in seekers of truth, right? And so the idea was that they are from Spelljammer. The idea is that the Seekers will do stuff like they will go out and they'll be part of an adventuring party. And if you encounter a troll or something like that, um and you notice that it has a problem with fire, they the Seekers are often in my games trying to basically make a monster's manual. And we also compared them to in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, one of the main characters, his name is Ford. He works for the Hitchhiker's Guide, which is sort of like an encyclopedia. So he's a writer for it. And so he's supposed to go to these planets and then write the encyclopedia entry basically on that planet, right? Likewise, the Seekers do a very similar thing. They go out, they have adventures, and then they're trying to record the facts of how the world works, right? So the Seekers are for sure the good guys. The Xenos, who are for sure the bad guys, um, they frustratingly will rewrite history, and they are they believe in the superiority of humans. And so I really leaned into them a lot because like my brother-in-law used to play with us and he was a big D&D fan. And one of the things he would often say is he'd go, "You're running it wrong. You're running it wrong. That's not, that's not how this is, or that's not how that is." And I would tell him that the D&D books are a jumping off point for your imagination to do your own thing, right? He completely disagreed. He thought, there is sort of like D&D canon, and you have to memorize all this stuff other people have where they're using their imagination, by the way. I don't know why my imagination is not as good as theirs, but whatever. So he was really pushing this, and he would get really, really bothered. Um, like for instance, something I might do is I don't like it when like I'll use trolls again as my example. If if a group of low level characters who have never met a troll, if they encounter a troll for the first time and they're the kind of gamers that the first thing they do is they say, "I light my torch." Right? I hate that. That drives me nuts because your character wouldn't know to do that. It's a form of cheating, right? And so something I did to try to counter that is when someone says, "I light my torch," I'd say, "Okay, this troll isn't weak to fire. He has a different weakness." So this is the sort of thing that Scott, my brother-in-law, would throw a fit about, right? So I would play it off then in the game as I'd say, why you think they have a weakness to fire is the Xenos. Because when the Seekers write a book about something, the Xenos go in and edit it and change it and so on and so forth. And so then part of it is if I'm running something wrong about, let's say, the Roman Empire, and there's someone at the table that says, "Well, actually, the Romans did this," then I say, "Well, you think that because you're reading the history books that the Xenos have had a hand in." You know what I mean? Hopefully that all made sense. If it doesn't make sense, just ask me in the comments section, a question and I'll happily answer it. But yeah, out of this Londinium campaign came the Seekers versus Xenos thing. And then this also was the beginning of, there's a trend in the game because, like I say, right now we're on Earth. We're not going to stay on Earth, right? But for right now, we're on Earth. And so you might be asking some questions like, well, wait a minute, why are there all these monsters on Earth? You know, so the Xenos are trying to come to power on Earth. And so one of the things they're going to do is they're going to manipulate the situation to cause the Crusades to happen. And in our world, the Crusades are not just what they were in real life, right? It is also the Xenos getting rid of all the non-humans. So that's why in the modern day Earth, like there's, there don't seem to be any monsters around. We still run it where there's the occasional thing, and then that's like responsible for stories like Bigfoot, or Spelljammer stuff might be responsible for the UFO phenomenon, that kind of thing. So we're saying there's still some stuff in the modern day, but to make this all match up, it's all about the Xenos, where they're becoming arguably the main bad guy group for the entire game world. But it all starts here. And then the ability to leave. So then we had characters from other planets were coming here. And so then that was letting people play stuff that when you think of the Roman Empire, you're like, well, I don't normally think of, like, say, elves. I might think of a centaur or a cyclops or something, but like not necessarily a hobbit or whatever, right? If people wanted to play something else, we said they came in a Spelljammer, and then also there were parts where, because we were doing this all summer long, people would leave Earth to go do something because they got tired of what was going on Earth, and then when they got tired of that, they would come back, and that was one reason for the Spelljammer presence. Um, but yeah, I feel like this video is long enough. Just saying that you understand the setting and sort of the political situation going on in this one. Um, and the big takeaway is Ectorius and Caius. Um, they become companions, and they're part of the party for the long haul. They're around for a really long time. I should also mention, I guess, before I wrap this up, uh, because of the rivalry with Caius, he and Arthur, um, they become very brotherly with one another. And then um, Ectorius, therefore, becomes fatherly. Also, this is where we start to use Latin words to refer to Artie. And they all mean bear. That's the takeaway. Artorigios, Artor, all those things are just Latin words that mean bear. And since he's a werebear, that's what we're calling him. But yeah, I guess that's pretty good for this video. I hope that you thought it was interesting. If so, be sure to hit like and leave a comment. It really helps out the channel. Um, subscribe, ring the bell, all that jazz, and we'll see you in the next one.